"Ma'am, step away from the trailer and keep your hands where I can see them." The voice cut through the cold Texas rain like a steel blade dragged across concrete. Naomi Carter slowly lowered the diesel nozzle back into its holder beside pump number 6. The fluorescent lights of the rest stopped, flickering above her in weak pulses of white and yellow. Water rolled off the brim of her black trucker cap and dripped onto the shoulders of her faded gray jacket, while 18-wheelers rumbled past the interstate less than 100 yards away, their headlights slicing through the storm like restless ghosts. She didn't turn around immediately. Instead, her eyes lifted toward the reflection in the rain-covered side mirror of her Freightliner Cascadia. 2 county patrol SUVs sat behind her truck with red and blue lights flashing across the wet pavement. 3 officers were already approaching. One hand rested near a holster. Another carried a flashlight bright enough to bleach the color from the night. Naomi finally turned slowly, calm enough to make the tension feel heavier. "Problem, officers?" she asked quietly. Deputy Ryan Mercer looked her up and down before answering. His gaze paused on the giant black rig parked behind her like he couldn't decide which surprised him more, the truck or the woman driving it. "License and registration," he said flatly. Naomi reached into her jacket pocket carefully, every movement controlled, every breath measured. 11 months undercover had trained her body to stay steady even when every instinct screamed otherwise. But tonight felt wrong, different. Somewhere beyond the rows of idling trucks and buzzing vending machines, danger was already moving ahead of schedule. Officer Travis Cole stepped closer, boots splashing through shallow puddles as he scanned the truck with narrowed eyes. "That your rig?" he asked. Naomi handed over her commercial driver's license without reacting. "Registered under Carter Logistics." Travis smirked faintly. "Didn't ask whose name was on the paperwork." The rain intensified, rattling against metal roofs and diesel tanks across the crowded stop. A few truckers lingered near the diner windows holding paper coffee cups, watching the scene unfold with the detached curiosity people carried on lonely highways after midnight. Naomi noticed them without looking directly. Witnesses, cameras, phones, noise. Her right ear buzzed softly beneath her hood. A nearly invisible communication piece hidden against her skin crackled once. Then a voice whispered low enough for only her to hear. "Target trailer arrived 7 minutes early. Maintain cover. Do not engage local law enforcement." Naomi's jaw tightened almost invisibly. Somewhere within 300 feet of her truck sat a white refrigerated trailer carrying more than frozen produce. The FBI had tracked the trafficking route from Arizona through New Mexico into East Texas over the course of nearly a year. Tonight was supposed to be surveillance only. Quiet. Controlled. Federal extraction units were still 20 minutes away. But now county cops had inserted themselves directly into the middle of the operation. Travis shined his flashlight toward the sleeper cab. "Mind opening the truck?" Naomi met his stare evenly. "Is there a reason for the search?" His smile widened just enough to feel ugly beneath the neon glow. "You always ask that many questions?" Deputy Mercer chuckled under his breath, while another officer circled slowly toward the rear trailer hitch. Naomi could feel the operation slipping sideways inch by inch. Then she heard it. Faint, almost swallowed by thunder. 3 soft knocks from somewhere beyond the fuel island. Her pulse stalled for half a second. Knock, knock, knock. Not metal shifting. Not cargo movement. Human. Small. Desperate. Naomi's eyes flicked toward the dark row of parked trailers near the back fence before she caught herself. Travis noticed anyway. "Something over there got your attention?" he asked. Naomi forced her face blank again. Rainwater slid down her cheek as 18 wheels hissed across the interstate behind them. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled low across the Texas sky. And beneath it all, hidden under diesel fumes, wet asphalt, and flashing police lights, Naomi Carter realized the people inside that trailer might not have 20 minutes left. Officer Travis Cole tapped Naomi's commercial license twice against his flashlight before handing it back slowly, like he wanted the moment to last longer than necessary. Rain hammered the metal roof above the fuel pumps while diesel fumes drifted through the cold night air thick enough to taste. Naomi slid the license into her pocket without speaking. Around them, engines idled in uneven rhythms across the crowded rest stop, deep mechanical vibrations rolling beneath the storm like distant thunder. Deputy Mercer moved toward the Freightliner again, dragging his flashlight beam across the side panels and chrome fuel tanks. "Pretty clean truck for somebody running solo," he muttered. Naomi zipped her jacket higher against the wind. "I take care of my equipment." Travis gave a quiet laugh that did not reach his eyes. Equipment like this usually belongs to companies, not independent drivers. Naomi said nothing. She had learned a long time ago that silence unsettled men like him more than arguments ever could. A gust of rain swept sideways through the station lot, rattling the plastic banners above the diner windows. Somewhere nearby, an air brake released with a sharp hiss. Naomi's earpiece crackled again beneath her hood. Federal units delayed 12 minutes. Repeat, 12 minutes. Hold position. Her pulse slowed instead of rising. Years undercover had trained her body to survive pressure by becoming still inside it. She glanced past Travis toward the far edge of the truck stop, where rows of trailers sat under weak sodium lights near the tree line. Most were dark. One was not. A white refrigerated trailer hummed softly near the back fence, its refrigeration unit rattling with an uneven metallic rhythm. 3 soft knocks came again from somewhere inside it. Barely audible, barely human. Naomi looked away immediately before anyone noticed. But Travis had already caught the movement. "You know somebody parked back there?" he asked. Naomi kept her voice level. "I am looking at a parking lot, officer." Mercer snorted quietly, while another deputy stepped closer carrying a clipboard damp from the rain. "Dispatch says your route started in Tucson 3 days ago," the deputy said. "That right?" Naomi nodded once. "Produced delivery to Little Rock." "Funny thing about truckers," Travis said as he circled slowly around her. "Some move vegetables. Some move things they do not put on shipping manifests." Neon lights flickered across his wet uniform, while water dripped steadily from the brim of his hat. Naomi could feel every second stretching thinner. Federal surveillance drones were already overhead somewhere beyond the storm clouds. Backup teams were fighting weather delays on Interstate 20. And hidden less than a football field away sat terrified people waiting inside a refrigerated trailer, growing colder by the minute. Travis stopped directly in front of her. "Open the cab." Naomi held his stare for 2 long seconds before reaching for the passenger side handle. The cabin light clicked on softly, revealing a worn sleeping bunk, folded maps, a half-empty thermos, and stacks of shipping paperwork scattered across the dashboard. Everything looked exactly like the truck of a woman who had spent almost a year crossing state lines alone, which was precisely the point. Mercer climbed onto the side step and flashed his light through the interior. "Damn," he muttered. "You practically live in here." Naomi rested one hand against the cold metal doorframe. "That is usually how trucking works." One of the deputies laughed under his breath. Travis did not. His eyes narrowed toward a small silver cross hanging from the rearview mirror beside a faded photo clipped near the windshield. In the picture, Naomi stood beside an older black man wearing mechanic coveralls outside a small garage somewhere in Alabama. Travis tilted his head slightly. "Your husband?" Naomi glanced at the photo. "My father. Still alive." Naomi's expression barely shifted. "No, sir." For the first time all night, Travis hesitated. Just briefly. Then the hardness returned. "Step away from the truck," he said. "We are going to run a full inspection." Lightning flashed across the Texas sky so brightly that the entire rest stop turned white for half a second. And from somewhere near the dark trailer at the back fence, Naomi heard what sounded unmistakably like a child coughing. The sound was small, fragile, almost swallowed by the storm, but Naomi heard it clearly. A child coughing. Dry, weak, coming from the white refrigerated trailer near the back fence. The cold rain rolled down the side of her Freightliner, while Officer Travis Cole watched her face carefully, searching for reactions the way hunters watch tree lines at dawn. Naomi stepped down from the cab slowly, boots splashing against oil-streaked pavement. "Anything wrong?" Travis asked. His flashlight beam stayed fixed on her eyes. Naomi adjusted her gloves calmly. "Just tired." Travis studied her another second before nodding toward Deputy Mercer. "Run the plates again." Mercer moved toward the patrol SUV while the other deputies continued circling the truck. The rest stop had grown quieter over the last few minutes. A few truckers disappeared back inside the diner. Others remained behind fogged windows holding styrofoam coffee cups, watching the flashing lights outside, like people watching weather roll across open farmland. Naomi could feel the clock tightening around her. 12 minutes until federal support. Maybe less if the storm slowed them further. Too long if the refrigeration unit back there was already failing. Her earpiece crackled softly beneath her hood. Visual confirms movement inside target trailer. Maintain position. Repeat. Do not compromise operation. Naomi closed her eyes briefly as rainwater dripped from her lashes. 11 months undercover. 11 months eating alone at truck stops, sleeping beside highways, pretending not to notice racism dressed up as routine traffic stops and fake smiles. She had survived biker gangs in Oklahoma, corrupt dispatchers in Arizona, smugglers outside El Paso, and lonely stretches of interstate so dark they felt endless. She had endured all of it because this route mattered. The trafficking network moved people hidden inside commercial freight from border towns to major cities across the South. Women, teenagers, children. Invisible cargo hidden behind legal paperwork and refrigerated steel. Tonight was supposed to end it quietly, cleanly, but nothing felt clean anymore. Travis stepped closer again, lowering his voice slightly. "You nervous, Miss Carter?" Naomi looked at him steadily. "Should I be?" A faint grin touched his face. "Depends what you are hauling." Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating rows of wet trucks lined beneath the storm clouds. For a brief second, the white trailer near the fence became visible again. Naomi noticed something she had missed before. Fresh condensation coated the rear doors unevenly. The refrigeration system was cycling incorrectly. Too cold. Her stomach tightened. Another cough echoed faintly through the rain. Mercer returned from the patrol SUV carrying a tablet. "Everything checks out," he admitted reluctantly. "No warrants. Clean commercial record." Travis frowned slightly, as if disappointed by the answer. "Maybe we should bring in K-9 anyway." Naomi's pulse slowed dangerously. K-9 units would trigger panic inside the trailer. Panic meant noise. Noise meant suspects fleeing before federal extraction teams arrived. The entire operation could collapse in minutes. She kept her face expressionless. A passing 18-wheeler blasted air horns while merging back onto Interstate 20, the sound vibrating through the wet night like distant thunder. Then Naomi saw movement near the diner entrance. A little blonde girl wearing pink rain boots stood beside a vending machine, holding her mother's hand. She stared curiously at the police lights before suddenly covering her ears against the cold wind. Naomi's chest tightened unexpectedly. The child looked about the same age as the youngest victim mentioned in the trafficking files. 8 years old, missing for nearly 4 months. Travis followed Naomi's gaze and smirked faintly. "Funny thing about highways," he said quietly. "You never really know who is passing through." Naomi looked back at him without blinking. "No, sir," she replied softly. "Sometimes you really do not." Somewhere beyond the storm clouds, a helicopter rotor thudded faintly in the distance. Too far away to help yet. Too close for mistakes now. Then from the far end of the parking lot, one of the deputies suddenly shouted, "Sheriff just called. We got reports of suspicious cargo movement behind the storage fence." Travis turned immediately toward the white trailer, and Naomi realized the night was about to break wide open. Rain swept across the rest stop in long silver sheets as Officer Travis Cole turned toward the far end of the parking lot, his flashlight beam cutting through rows of trailers lined beneath the storm-dark sky. The refrigeration unit on the white trailer continued rattling unevenly near the back fence, its metallic hum vibrating low through the wet pavement. Deputy Mercer adjusted his jacket against the wind and pointed toward it. "That one has been sitting there over an hour," he said. No driver checked inside the diner. Travis narrowed his eyes. "Let us take a look." Naomi felt the muscles in her shoulders tighten beneath her soaked jacket. Her earpiece buzzed again, sharper this time. "Do not approach target trailer. Federal units are 6 minutes out." 6 minutes. In normal life, 6 minutes disappeared without notice. At a truck stop after midnight, 6 minutes could feel like a lifetime. Another cough echoed faintly through the rain. Naomi heard it clearly. So did Travis. His head turned slightly toward the sound before he started walking across the lot. Deputy Mercer and the others followed behind him, boots splashing through puddles reflecting red and blue police lights. Naomi stayed frozen beside her Freightliner for half a second, breathing slowly through the cold diesel air. Then she followed. Wind pushed against her as she crossed the parking lot, the fluorescent station lights fading weaker near the fence line. The farther they moved from the diner, The quieter everything became except for the storm and the rumble of interstate traffic beyond the trees. Travis stopped 10 feet from the trailer doors. White paint. No visible company logo. Out-of-state plates streaked with mud. A thick padlock hung from the rear latch. Condensation rolled down the metal sides like sweat. Mercer tapped the trailer with his flashlight. "You hearing that?" he asked quietly. The refrigeration motor coughed unevenly again. Then came another sound. Soft movement inside. Naomi watched Travis's posture shift. Suspicion hardened into certainty. "Open it," he ordered. One deputy stepped forward immediately. Naomi's voice cut through the rain before she could stop herself. "Do not touch that lock." Every head turned toward her. The storm seemed to pause around the silence that followed. Travis stared at her from beneath dripping hat brims and flashing patrol lights. "Excuse me," he asked slowly. Naomi stepped closer, careful, controlled. "That trailer is dangerous." Travis laughed once under his breath. "Dangerous?" Naomi kept her eyes on the lock. "You do not understand what is inside." Mercer folded his arms. "Funny. Sounds like she knows exactly what is inside." Naomi's heartbeat pressed heavily against her ribs now, but her face remained calm. She could not reveal herself. Not yet. Federal protocol existed for a reason. Backup teams needed suspects alive. Surveillance needed chain-of-command integrity. But somewhere inside that refrigerated steel box, children were running out of time. Travis took another step toward her. Rainwater dripped from his jawline onto the collar of his uniform. "You got something you want to tell us?" Naomi looked directly at him. "Officer, if you break that seal without medical support nearby, people could die from shock exposure." The words landed hard enough to silence everyone. Mercer frowned immediately. "People?" Travis's eyes sharpened. "What people?" Naomi realized too late she had said too much. Her earpiece crackled violently. "Agent Carter, stand down immediately." She ignored it. Another weak knocking sound came from inside the trailer. Slower now. Weaker. One deputy near the rear doors looked visibly uneasy. "Sheriff did say trafficking alerts went statewide last month," he muttered quietly. Travis snapped toward him. "Do not start guessing." But uncertainty had already entered the air like smoke. Naomi stepped forward again, rain soaking through her gloves. "Open it carefully," she said. "And call emergency services now." Travis stared at her for a long moment, his expression shifting between suspicion and calculation. Then his jaw tightened. How would a truck driver know anything about trafficking operations? Lightning exploded across the sky so brightly that the entire lot flashed white again. And for the first time all night, Naomi Carter looked directly at the trailer and whispered softly enough that only Travis heard her. "Because I have been hunting them for almost a year." The rain came harder now, hammering the trailer roof with a steady metallic roar while every officer near the fence stared at Naomi Carter in stunned silence. Water rolled down her face and jacket sleeves, but she did not move. The flashing patrol lights reflected across the wet steel doors behind her in violent streaks of red and blue. Officer Travis Cole stepped closer slowly, his expression unreadable beneath the storm-dark brim of his hat. "What did you just say?" he asked quietly. Naomi's breathing remained controlled. She could hear her own pulse beneath the distant thunder and the low growl of idling diesel engines from the interstate. Her earpiece crackled sharply again. "Agent Carter, you are compromising the operation." She ignored it. Travis looked toward Deputy Mercer, then back at Naomi. "You some kind of vigilante truck driver now?" Naomi's eyes stayed locked on the trailer. Another weak cough sounded from inside, followed by silence heavy enough to feel wrong. One deputy near the rear doors shifted uneasily. "Sir," he muttered, "maybe we should call medical before opening this thing." Travis snapped his attention toward him. "Nobody asked for your opinion." The deputy immediately fell silent. Naomi watched the exchange carefully. Fear had entered the scene now. Not just suspicion. Fear changed people faster than anger ever could. Mercer stepped toward the lock with a crowbar pulled from the back of the patrol SUV. Rainwater dripped from the metal tool as he looked at Travis for approval. "We doing this?" Travis hesitated for the first time all night. Naomi saw it clearly. He still did not trust her, but something inside him had shifted the moment she mentioned trafficking. Maybe instinct. Maybe guilt. Maybe the realization that the woman he treated like a roadside suspect somehow knew things she should not know. The refrigeration motor suddenly sputtered behind them with a loud grinding cough. Then it stopped completely. Silence crashed over the parking lot. No motor. No cooling system. Just rain and distant traffic. Naomi's chest tightened immediately. "Open it now," she said sharply. Travis looked at her again. "You sure seem real invested in this trailer." Naomi took one step toward him. "Because there are people inside." Mercer frowned. "How many?" Naomi swallowed once. "Enough." The word hung in the cold air between them. One of the deputies near the fence quietly reached for his radio and called emergency dispatch. Travis did not stop him this time. Lightning flashed across the sky again, illuminating the rest stop so brightly that every puddle looked silver for a split second. Naomi noticed movement inside the trailer then. Faint scratching against metal. Weak. Slow. Her stomach turned cold. Mercer wedged the crowbar beneath the lock. "On 3, he muttered. Travis nodded once. Naomi's earpiece exploded with static. "Federal units arriving in 60 seconds. Do not breach before extraction teams secure the perimeter." Too late now. Mercer pulled hard against the lock. Metal groaned sharply through the storm. Then suddenly headlights appeared at the far entrance of the truck stop. Black SUVs tore across the parking lot fast enough to spray sheets of water behind their tires. Bright white headlights cut through the rain, while sirens screamed low beneath the thunder. Every officer near the trailer turned instantly. Travis stared toward the incoming vehicles with confusion spreading across his face. The lead SUV stopped hard beside the fuel island. Doors opened immediately. Men and women in dark federal jackets stepped into the rain, carrying radios and tactical flashlights. Large yellow letters stretched across their backs. FBI. The entire parking lot froze. Deputy Mercer slowly lowered the crowbar from the trailer lock. One federal agent moved directly toward Naomi through the storm without hesitation. "Agent Carter," he called loudly. "Are you injured?" Travis's face drained of color. Naomi finally reached into the inside pocket of her soaked jacket and removed the black leather credentials she had hidden for nearly a year. Rain rolled off the gold badge as she flipped it open beneath the flashing patrol lights. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Even the storm itself seemed quieter now. Travis stared at the badge, then at Naomi, like his mind could not force the two images together. The tired black truck driver standing in the rain had vanished. In her place stood a federal agent who had just walked straight through his assumptions without raising her voice once. Rainwater streamed off the edges of the white trailer, while flashing federal lights painted the entire truck stop in waves of blue, gold, and red. Nobody spoke for several long seconds. Officer Travis Cole stood frozen beside the rear doors, staring at the FBI credentials still open in Naomi Carter's hand. The storm rolled low across the Texas sky, but the silence underneath it felt heavier than thunder. Naomi closed the badge slowly and slipped it back inside her jacket. Her hands were steady again. Calm had returned the moment the truth no longer needed hiding. Around them, federal agents moved quickly through the parking lot with clipped voices and controlled urgency. Radios crackled. Medical teams unloaded thermal blankets and oxygen kits from the black SUVs. Deputy Mercer stepped backward from the trailer as though the steel doors themselves had changed shape in front of him. His face had lost all color. Naomi could still see the crowbar hanging loosely from his hand. Agent Daniel Reyes approached her through the rain, his dark FBI jacket soaked nearly black beneath the flashing lights. "We lost drone feed for 6 minutes during the storm," he said quietly. "You held longer than expected." Naomi looked toward the trailer. The refrigeration unit failed. Reyes followed her eyes immediately. His expression hardened. Without another word, he signaled toward the extraction team near the ambulances. Officers from the county department stood clustered together now near their patrol vehicles, no longer controlling the scene, no longer speaking with confidence. One younger deputy avoided looking at Naomi entirely. Another stared down at the wet pavement beneath his boots, as if ashamed to raise his head. Travis remained still near the trailer doors, rain dripping steadily from his sleeves. "Nobody told us federal agents were operating here," he muttered finally. Naomi looked at him calmly. That was the point of undercover work. Travis swallowed once. The answer landed harder than anger would have. Nearby, emergency personnel carefully opened the rear trailer seal, while paramedics waited beside portable heaters beneath the storm. The metal doors groaned loudly as they pulled apart. Warm breath fogged into the cold night air immediately from inside the dark trailer. Then came movement. Small figures wrapped in blankets. Frightened eyes blinking beneath flashlight beams. One by one, survivors were guided carefully down portable steps into waiting medical tents near the fuel station. The entire truck stop fell quiet watching it happen. Even the truckers gathered beneath the diner awning removed their hats slowly as the children passed. Naomi stood motionless beneath the rain while paramedics moved around her carrying blankets and bottled water. A little girl with tangled dark hair paused near the ambulance entrance and looked directly at Naomi for a brief second. Fear still filled the child's face, but something else existed there too now. Relief. Naomi looked away first. 11 months. Endless highways. Sleepless nights. Fake names. Fake routes. Coffee at 3 in the morning beside strangers who never noticed her. Every lonely mile suddenly felt real standing there in the storm. Deputy Mercer finally approached slowly, water dripping from his uniform collar. "Agent Carter," he said awkwardly. "I did not know." Naomi's eyes remained on the ambulances. "No," she answered softly. "You already decided who I was before asking." Mercer lowered his head immediately. Behind them, Travis still had not moved. The bright patrol lights reflected off the wet pavement around his boots while federal agents documented the scene he almost disrupted. Naomi could see the moment realization fully settled onto him. Not just that she was FBI, not just that the trailer carried trafficking victims, but that every assumption he made that night had been wrong from the beginning. The rain finally began easing into a softer drizzle. Somewhere beyond the storm clouds, helicopter rotors faded slowly into the distance. The truck stop no longer felt loud. No shouting, no accusations, just the hum of emergency heaters, quiet radio chatter, and exhausted children wrapped in silver thermal blankets beneath fluorescent lights. Naomi removed her trucker cap and ran one tired hand through damp curls pressed against her forehead. Then she looked toward her Freightliner sitting alone beneath the fuel station lights. Mud splashed across the chrome. Sleeper curtains half drawn. A simple truck belonging to a woman nobody had bothered to truly see until the night everything changed. The storm drifted east slowly after midnight, leaving behind wet asphalt that reflected the emergency lights like broken pieces of glass scattered across the truck stop parking lot. The air smelled of diesel fuel, rainwater, and overheated generators from the medical tents lined beside the diner. Naomi Carter stood near the hood of her Freightliner with a thermal blanket wrapped loosely around her shoulders, though she barely noticed the cold anymore. Federal agents continued moving around the scene with quiet precision, documenting trailers, interviewing drivers, checking manifests. The chaos had settled into something quieter now. Controlled. Heavy. Across the lot, paramedics guided the rescued children into waiting ambulances while social workers knelt beside them with dry clothes and warm drinks. Some of the children stared blankly into the fluorescent lights. Others held stuffed blankets against their chests like lifelines. Naomi watched every face carefully without speaking. Agent Daniel Reyes approached holding 2 paper coffee cups, steam curling upward into the cold night air. He handed one to Naomi without a word. She wrapped both hands around it slowly, letting the warmth settle into her fingers. 7 victims confirmed alive, Reyes said quietly. 3 minors on the National Missing Persons Database. Naomi lowered her eyes briefly. Relief did not come loudly after undercover work. It arrived like exhaustion finally loosening its grip. Reyes leaned beside her against the truck. "You did good tonight." Naomi stared out toward the rows of flashing lights. "I almost compromised the operation." Reyes shook his head once. "You listened to your instincts. That is why those kids are breathing." Nearby, Officer Travis Cole remained beside his patrol SUV, speaking with 2 federal supervisors. His posture had changed completely since the FBI arrived. Gone was the swagger, the sharp smile, the casual suspicion in his voice. Now he looked smaller somehow beneath the wet parking lot lights, like the storm had stripped away something invisible he used to wear. Deputy Mercer sat alone on the rear bumper of another cruiser with his hat in his hands, staring silently at the pavement. Naomi noticed he had not looked directly at anyone in nearly 20 minutes. A little girl wrapped in a silver thermal blanket suddenly appeared near Naomi's truck, guided gently by one of the social workers. She could not have been older than 8. Dark curls framed her tired face, while oversized wool socks slid slightly against her small rain boots. The social worker smiled softly toward Naomi. She asked if she could say thank you. Naomi crouched carefully despite the ache in her knees. The little girl looked at her for a long second before holding out a tiny plastic bracelet made from faded blue string and alphabet beads. One bead was missing near the center. "I made it in the trailer," the child whispered. Naomi's throat tightened unexpectedly. "For me?" The girl nodded once. "You came." Naomi accepted the bracelet carefully, like it was something fragile enough to break under too much pressure. The little girl reached forward suddenly and wrapped her arms around Naomi's shoulders. For a moment, the sounds of radios, generators, and idling engines faded completely. Naomi closed her eyes briefly against the child's damp curls. Somewhere nearby, Deputy Mercer quietly turned his face away. Even Agent Reyes lowered his eyes respectfully toward the ground. When the girl finally stepped back, Naomi smiled softly for the first time all night. "What is your name?" she asked. "Elena," the girl answered. The social worker guided her gently back toward the ambulances. Naomi remained crouched there for another second, holding the tiny bracelet in her hand, while rainwater dripped steadily from the edge of the freightliner beside her. Then she heard footsteps approaching slowly through shallow puddles. Officer Travis Cole stopped several feet away, his uniform still soaked from the storm. He looked older now beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Tired, ashamed, Naomi stood slowly to face him. Travis glanced briefly toward the ambulances before speaking. "All those hours tonight," he said quietly. "I kept looking at you and seeing somebody suspicious." Naomi said nothing. Travis swallowed hard once. "Turns out you were the only person here actually protecting anybody." The wind moved softly through the parking lot between them, while the last of the storm clouds drifted across the Texas sky. Naomi looked down at the small blue bracelet resting in her palm before answering in a calm voice that carried no anger at all. "Sometimes people only see what they expect to see, officer. That is how the wrong people stay invisible for so long." The rain finally stopped just before 3 in the morning, leaving the truck stop wrapped in a damp silver haze beneath the fluorescent canopy lights. Steam rose softly from the wet pavement where emergency vehicles still lined the parking lot in uneven rows. Most of the rescued children had already been transported to hospitals and emergency shelters across the county. The rest stop that had once echoed with sirens and shouting now felt strangely quiet, almost fragile, like the night itself was exhausted. Naomi Carter stood beside the open driver door of her freightliner, holding a dry towel one of the paramedics had given her. Her jacket hung over the side mirror, dripping steadily onto the asphalt below. The small blue bracelet Elena had given her rested carefully around Naomi's wrist now, loose against her skin. Inside the diner, a few truckers sat silently nursing fresh coffee while television screens replayed weather alerts no one was really watching anymore. Agent Daniel Reyes walked out carrying a thin manila folder beneath one arm. "The county sheriff is cooperating fully," he said. "Federal Internal Affairs will review the stop." Naomi leaned lightly against the truck. "And Travis Cole?" Reyes glanced toward the far side of the parking lot where the officer stood alone beside his patrol SUV, speaking quietly into a radio. "He is suspended pending investigation." Naomi lowered her eyes briefly but did not respond. Reyes studied her face carefully. "You are not happy about it." Naomi looked across the lot toward the empty white trailer still surrounded by federal tape and portable floodlights. "I did not spend 11 months undercover hoping to destroy somebody." Reyes nodded slowly. "Most people would not be feeling charitable right now." Naomi gave a faint, tired smile. "Most people did not spend 11 months pretending to be invisible." Wind moved softly across the truck stop, carrying the distant smell of wet cedar from the tree line beyond the interstate. A long-haul truck roared past on Interstate 20, headlights streaking through the darkness before fading into the horizon. The world kept moving even after nights like this. It always did. Footsteps approached slowly from behind them. Travis Cole stopped several feet away again, this time without the swagger or suspicion that once filled every movement he made. His uniform looked wrinkled now beneath the harsh parking lot lights. Tired lines pressed deeper around his eyes. Reyes stepped away quietly, leaving the two of them alone beside the freightliner. Travis cleared his throat once before speaking. "I owe you an apology." Naomi remained still. Travis looked down briefly at the wet pavement before continuing. Not because you are FBI. Because before any of that badge stuff mattered, I already made up my mind about you. Naomi watched him carefully without interrupting. Travis gave a hollow laugh at himself. Woman driving a truck alone. Black. Quiet. Tired clothes. I looked at you and saw trouble before I saw a person. The honesty in his voice carried more weight than excuses ever could. Naomi folded the towel slowly in her hands. That kind of thinking is how people disappear in plain sight, she said softly. Travis nodded once, unable to argue. Nearby, Deputy Mercer quietly loaded equipment back into the patrol SUV without speaking. The younger deputies moved differently now too. Slower. More careful. Like something invisible had shifted inside all of them tonight. Travis glanced toward the ambulances leaving the parking lot one by one. Those kids are alive because you stayed calm while we kept pushing you. Naomi looked out across the highway lights glowing faintly beyond the rain-soaked rest stop. No, she answered quietly. They are alive because eventually somebody listened. Silence settled gently between them after that. Not hostile, just honest. Travis removed his hat slowly, rainwater still dripping from the brim, and held it against his chest for a moment. For whatever it is worth, he said, I will not forget tonight. Naomi looked at him one last time before climbing into the driver's seat of her Freightliner. Her voice remained calm, almost gentle. Then make sure the next person you stop does not have to earn basic respect first. Travis stood motionless beside the truck as Naomi closed the cab door softly behind her. Outside, dawn had started creeping faint gray light across the eastern Texas sky. Dawn arrived slowly over the Texas interstate, washing the truck stop in pale blue light that softened everything the storm had left behind. The emergency vehicles were mostly gone now. Only a few federal SUVs remained parked near the diner beside stacks of folded barricades and empty coffee cups left behind by exhausted agents who had worked through the night. The wet pavement still reflected streaks of gold and silver beneath the fading fluorescent canopy lights, but the chaos had finally settled into quiet. Naomi Carter sat alone inside the cab of her Freightliner with both hands wrapped around a fresh cup of black coffee. The engine hummed softly beneath her seat, while warm air drifted through the vents carrying the faint smell of diesel and rain-soaked leather. Her trucker cap rested on the dashboard beside her folded FBI credentials. For the first time in nearly a year, there was no hidden radio frequency buzzing in her ear. No fake route to memorize. No undercover name waiting at the next truck stop. Just silence. Calm. Real silence. Outside the windshield, the sky brightened gradually over Interstate 20 while morning traffic began flowing again in long, steady lines. Families heading east. Delivery trucks crossing state lines. People chasing ordinary mornings without realizing how close danger had traveled beside them overnight. Naomi watched the highway quietly, exhaustion resting deep behind her eyes now that adrenaline had finally faded. A soft knock tapped against the cab door. Naomi looked down and saw Deputy Ryan Mercer standing below with 2 paper breakfast bags from the diner in his hands. He looked uncomfortable even before she opened the door. Naomi climbed carefully down onto the wet pavement. Mercer handed her one of the bags awkwardly. Egg sandwich, he said quietly. Best thing they make here. Naomi accepted it with a faint nod. Thank you. Mercer glanced toward the empty trailer lot near the fence line where federal teams had worked all night. My little sister drives trucks, he admitted after a moment. Started last year after her divorce. Naomi leaned lightly against the Freightliner door listening. Mercer rubbed the back of his neck uncomfortably. I kept thinking about her after everything happened. He looked down at the pavement before continuing. If somebody treated her the way we treated you tonight. His voice faded before the sentence finished. Naomi studied him for a long second before speaking softly. Then make sure she does not become invisible to people sworn to protect her. Mercer nodded immediately, emotion tightening briefly across his face. He stepped back after that, giving a small respectful nod before returning toward the patrol vehicles waiting near the exit. Naomi watched him leave without another word. Nearby, Officer Travis Cole stood beside his SUV speaking with a federal supervisor beneath the pale morning sky. The sharp arrogance that once filled his posture was gone completely now. Before climbing into his vehicle, he glanced once toward Naomi's truck across the lot. He did not wave. He did not speak. But he removed his hat briefly in quiet acknowledgement before driving away down the interstate ramp. Naomi stood there watching until the patrol lights disappeared into the morning traffic. The wind moved softly through the rest stop, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and pine trees from beyond the highway. Somewhere behind her, the diner cook flipped the sign from closed to open. Life continuing. Always continuing. Naomi climbed back into the Freightliner and started the engine fully. The deep diesel rumble rolled through the quiet morning air while sunlight finally broke through the clouds in thin gold streaks across the chrome hood. Before pulling away, Naomi looked once at the small blue bracelet resting around her wrist. One missing bead. Frayed string. Tiny proof that someone survived long enough to be seen. She rested her hand gently against the steering wheel, then guided the Freightliner toward the interstate as dawn spread wider across the Texas sky. No sirens followed her this time. No flashing lights. Only the low, steady hum of the highway ahead and the quiet kind of justice that did not need to announce itself to be real.